Sarah Palin has been invoked frequently since news of the shooting in Arizona first broke on Saturday.
I think the right's trying to move too quickly away from this conversation. Indirectly could have had an impact.
The New York Times and Sarah Palin are headed for a showdown. The legal fight between the former governor and America's most famous newspaper stems from a story about a politically motivated shooting in 2017. The paper tried to connect the actions of a Bernie Sanders volunteer to a 2011 shooting that killed 6 people and injured Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. The writers attempted to link the brutal killings with Sarah Palin by saying that her campaign had circulated a graphic with crosshairs over top of her political rivals. Shortly before mentioning Sarah Palin, the paper said that the link to political incitement was clear in the Giffords shooting. The next day, the newspaper issued a correction, and the Washington Post published a fact check against the New York Times. Now, the former governor is attempting what might seem impossible, holding the New York Times liable for defamation. The bar is very high for anyone attempting to win a defamation case against a news behemoth like the New York Times, especially when it's a public figure or politician attempting to do so. Here's how it all started, what Palin stands to gain if she wins, and perhaps more importantly, what the New York Times stands to lose. In 2017, James T. Hodgkins, a Bernie Sanders campaign volunteer, shot a group of Republicans playing baseball. The team, which included Rand Paul, Jeff Flake, and Mike Bishop, was practicing for the Congressional Baseball Charity Game. Representative Steve Scalise was severely injured, as were several other individuals, including Capitol Police officers. Later that same day, the New York Times editorial board reported on the story with the headline, "America's Lethal Politics." The group went on to claim that Americans shouldn't be surprised by this kind of violence, and that the congressional shooting was part of a sickeningly familiar pattern. After describing the shooter's anti-Trump posts on social media, the writers said that the attack was probably evidence of how vicious American politics has become. And that's when the Times suggested that Sarah Palin played a role in a pattern of politically motivated violence. Shockingly, the writer went on to say that the shooting by the Bernie Sanders volunteer had less of a direct connection to a politician than the one he linked to Palin. In addressing the 2017 shooting, he wrote, "There's no sign of incitement as direct as in the Giffords attack." Emails among the New York Times writers have been made public as a result of this case, and they show how one staff member in particular was keen on ratcheting up the drama of the piece. James Bennett was editor of the New York Times editorial page when the article was published, and in his behind-the-scenes conversation about the article, he said that the first draft, before anything was published, acted more as a summary of the news. Instead, he wanted to capture the horror of the day. Now, Sarah Palin is no stranger to negative media coverage. When John McCain picked Sarah Palin as his running mate during the 2008 election, the media immediately had a field day poking fun at her folksy, bubbly personality. In a now infamous Saturday Night Live segment, Tina Fey portrayed the Alaska governor saying that she could see Russia from her home.
I believe that diplomacy should be the cornerstone of any foreign policy.
And I can see Russia from my house.
Sarah Palin had never actually said that, but to this day, 7 out of 10 Americans believe she did. Now that piece of misinformation is rather lighthearted in the way it creates a caricature. Other examples of Palin media coverage were much more serious, however, like the story that eventually led to the 2017 New York Times article. In 2011, Palin ran a political group that sought to elect Republicans. A graphic that appeared on the organization's Facebook page featured crosshairs over the districts of 20 Democratic representatives who had voted for Obamacare. The graphic was intended to show which representatives Republicans wanted to unseat in the upcoming midterm elections. One of those representatives was Gabrielle Giffords of Arizona, who in January 2011 was shot in the head. A man used a 9mm pistol to fire into the crowd, hitting 19 people and killing 6, including a federal judge and a 9-year-old girl. Almost right away, the media started bringing up the Sarah Pat graphic, wondering aloud if it contributed to the violence. ABC highlighted opponents, suggesting she may have fueled the gunman's rage. Politico pointed to her knack for incendiary rhetoric. Even after Palin issued a video calling the event a shocking tragedy and denying any wrongdoing on her part, the LA Times characterized her statement as forceful and unapologetic. Now, it's not all that uncommon for pro-Second Amendment politicians to feature gun rhetoric in their ads. Democrat Joe Manchin of West Virginia, for example, once said that he would take aim at climate legislation harmful to his state. Many immediately took note of this reality and the absurdity of the mainstream media's claims. As Republican strategist Nick Ayers said, "I'm just waiting for the DC media to link Sarah Palin to birds, crabs, and fish dropping dead around the planet because she has an outdoor reality show and enjoys hunting, because the two are about as connected." The Washington Post said at the time that it was outrageous to suggest that Palin had anything to do with the tragic event in Tucson. But like that infamous SNL segment from over a decade ago, the accusations against Sarah Palin still stick, regardless of the accuracy. In 2011, the media was quick to report on how other people were connecting Palin to the violence.
Palin was criticized for using the symbol as an incitement to gun violence.
Sarah Palin has been invoked frequently since news of the shooting in Arizona first broke on Saturday. Critics have singled out Ms. Palin.
As the media often does, they merely reported on what Democrats were saying about her. Unlike the New York Times in 2017, they were careful not to directly accuse her of instigating violence. That might sound like a very minor point, but it's key to the defamation lawsuits. News organizations have special protection against claims of libel and slander. For the most part, if they are reporting on what someone else said, rather than making the claim, the company is in the clear. However, in 2017, the New York Times editorial board wasn't quoting anyone else. They directly linked Palin to political violence. As a correction at the bottom of the article now admits, the writers originally claimed that there was a link between Palin's graphic and the Gabrielle Giffords shooting, even though no such link was proven, and that the Sarah Pack graphic depicted individual lawmakers, not electoral districts. One journalism professor wrote that there is no doubt that the New York Times screwed this up. The updated article goes out of its way to make that clear, saying that no connection to the shooting was ever established. But Palin has clearly had enough. In the aftermath of the article's publication, Sarah Palin filed a defamation lawsuit against the New York Times. At first, a federal judge dismissed the case, arguing that it did not rise to the level of defamation. He said, "Mistakes will be made," but also asserted that the editorial was written and rewritten rapidly in order to voice an opinion on an immediate event of importance. He goes on to say that even though there are a few factual inaccuracies, they were due to negligence rather than defamation. But 2 years later, in August 2019, the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals reinstated Palin's lawsuit. Although jury selection for the trial was supposed to begin on January 24th, Palin tested positive for COVID on the same day, delaying the proceedings until early February. Now Palin's lawyers will attempt to prove that the New York Times acted with actual malice, which is the legal standard that was set by a landmark case also involving the New York Times. While some New York Times employees have already made statements during depositions, it's not clear who will testify other than Sarah Palin. The outcome of the landmark case New York Times v. Sullivan set the standard that will be used here. It requires public figures to prove someone made a defamatory statement with knowledge that it was false or with reckless disregard of whether it was false or not. So what could be the result of Palin's lawsuit? While there is a significant sum of money at stake, both parties are also seeking bragging rights and a chance to set future legal precedent for cases of defamation. Palin is seeking over $400,000 for damage to her reputation. If Palin wins, she could receive the payout and the ability to proudly declare that the New York Times intentionally defamed her character. The New York Times, however, could end up losing much more than just a payout to Palin. A ruling in her favor could lead to much greater scrutiny of what the Times and other news outlets say about politicians and public figures. If that happens, we expect to see more lawsuits and verbal sparring with the media. If this case follows the trend of other recent arguments over defamation, such as Nicholas Sandmann settling with news outlets, Palin could be on the winning side. For the latest updates on the trial, visit dailywire.com. I'm Brett Cooper, thanks for watching.